want to do a good job on this one because if you see the bio for Dr. Ezinne Uzo-Okoro, she is amazing. She is Assistant Director for Space Policy at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. I want to read this whole thing. I hope you don't mind. I know we're running behind, but it's crazy. In almost 20 years of U.S. government service, Dr. Uzo-Okoro has developed several national space policies and contributed to over 60 NASA missions and programs. As an engineer, technical expert, manager, and executive in space science and technology topics. At the White House, she leads the space, aeronautics, and manufacturing portfolios and has released space policy on in-space servicing, assembling, and manufacturing, Earth observations, orbital debris, LEO, including microgravity research, space weather, aeronautics, human exploration, and space science. No wonder you don't get any sleep. I want to just say, I'm just amazed at her degrees. So she has a bachelor's in computer science at RPI, 3 masters, space systems at Johns Hopkins, space robotics at MIT, public policy at Harvard, and a PhD in aerospace engineering at MIT. Her story, I can't wait to go look this up, is profiled in President George Bush's W. Bush book, Out of Many One. So please welcome Dr. Ezinne Uzo-Okoro.
Good morning. Is this working? Can you hear me? Well, thank you, Casey, for that very generous introduction. It's great to be back in New Mexico. I think of this place as the home of warm, friendly people, of Julia Roberts and our very capable AFRL. So it's great to be here. And you know, Casey has already generously gone over my bio, so I will try to save us some time and get to the meat of my message today. General Olson, Bucky, and Robbie have actually helped because at the base of everything we do is the American people, all of you. We work for you, and I think that they have exemplified some of the work we do to show that we have results. And with hope, that is encouraging and that is empowering to you because that's what we do every day. So I will start by giving you a reminder of what OSTP does, the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and then get to how we got here today with in-space servicing, assembly, manufacturing. And then I'll give you a few thoughts on the space economy and what we are doing. But I do love the new name, New Space Nexus, because one of the points I will touch on today is the importance of accelerating innovation amongst the commercial sector in the US and accelerating that on a global level. So I'm very much supportive and grateful to you all for your leadership, Casey and team, over the last 4 years. Now, the overarching purpose of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy is to strengthen, advance, and use American science and technology to achieve our nation's great aspirations. First, I should say that if you are in Washington and you happen to be on close to campus, come and visit us. We are on what we call the nerd floor because we do a deep dive into all areas of science and technology within the building. We feel that our capacity for innovation is a phenomenally powerful engine for change, but we need to ensure that we can use that engine to resolve and provide solutions for some of the greatest challenges of our time today. And with hope, you see that we're doing some of that with our work. Now, our portfolios vary, and you've heard some of the things I work on. And I will dive right into in-space servicing, assembly, and manufacturing, starting off with the vision that we created for that sector, or that new sector that used to be on-orbit servicing. There were 6 strategic goals that were presented in the national ICM strategy a year ago. And the intention was to build on existing investments and emerging capabilities and chart a course using a national approach to help us realize opportunities enabled by ICM. How were we going to do that? We were going to do that by advancing R&D in ICM. We were going to do that by prioritizing the expansion of scalable infrastructure, by accelerating innovation in the private sector, by promoting international collaboration, by prioritizing sustainability as we move forward with these ICM capabilities, and also ensuring a diverse workforce. And the strategy cut across multiple outcomes: remote sensing capabilities on orbit, human exploration and lunar capabilities on the surface of the moon, and the future exploration of Mars. It also strived to empower US entities with varying interests to develop multi-purpose technologies to enable a new space economy on Earth and in space. We wanted the robotics companies here on Earth to talk to the robotics companies that are specialized on Mars exploration, and also the robotics companies that are specialized on cislunar space and the lunar surface, and those that are orbit agnostic. How do we get them to work together and create efficient technologies that we, the government, can use, that we can purchase in order to accomplish several of our missions? We believe that the space enterprise needs a coordinated and robust roadmap, some of which you've seen from the Department of Defense this morning on their approach on how to integrate current and future commercial ICM capabilities to address upcoming needs in the next 3 to 7 years. I say 3 to 7 years because it is my hope that we have a paradigm shift after 7 years. Perhaps the space asset class grows, and the government demand signal that is a critical need today is needed slightly less and is supplemented by a robust space finance ecosystem. Now, before we get into what it is we're doing today, I want to step back a bit to how we got here. Back in 2018, OSTP had conducted a survey of all of you, of commercial entities, US government stakeholders, and academia as well, to discuss challenges and opportunities of on-orbit servicing, assembly, and manufacturing. And at the time, there wasn't an overwhelming consensus in 2018 to develop a strategy or set forth a vision, but there was a desire to coordinate more within the federal government. We did that. NASA and DoD led the charge through initiative in 2020 to coordinate stakeholders. But as you see, the space ecosystem continues to grow, and it became clear to us that despite all the studies we'd done on global trends and technologies and capabilities and another norms of behavior, we were brought back to the need to show a vision, not just to US stakeholders, including you all, but to our international allies, partners, and strategic competitors as well. And in addition to this strategy, we, in a document called the US Space Priorities Framework that was released by the Vice President 2 years ago, we emphasized our desire to continue to lead, to continue to innovate and prioritize propelling the commercial sector as we continue to focus on, scientific and technological innovation and economic growth. So when you fast forward to today, research, and you all, frankly, have shown us that future modular reconfigurable space system architectures will enjoy a higher longevity and return on investment through adaptive mission options, extended operational lifetimes, and access to ISAM capabilities. We know that orbital persistent platforms can provide the in-space infrastructure necessary to prove out ISAM technologies and would help close the business case for several of our commercial providers. So for us, elevating the adoption and maturation of these technologies, these architectures and platforms are really key to sustained leadership in these technological advancements in all areas of ISAM and space. So we set off to answer the question, how do we develop policies to solve challenges and promote space commerce? We listened to all your recommendations, and it became clear that in order to improve coordination within the government, in order to send that demand signal that's critical today, in order to establish and adopt standards to help promote growth, we needed to not just give a vision, but also give executable actions that the US government can go and do to support and show that we are putting one foot in front of the other and accelerating your developments and innovation in this field. So with that, we released an implementation plan last December for in-space servicing, assembly, and manufacturing. And it is our intention that it creates jobs in multiple sectors, because for us to grow the space sector, we also have to utilize and grow adjacent sectors. But let's walk through those 6 strategic areas I mentioned earlier and what we are implementing in these goals. The first was on advancing research and development for ISAM. Well, how do we realize future missions and architectures that will use ISAM capabilities? Well, we need to know the high priority missions that the government will focus on so that architectures can be enabled or enhanced by ISAM R&D, and then share that with you all. So we're prioritizing that, DoD and NASA leading that effort right now. Well, what about testing? Both those agencies are also developing an ISAM test or demonstration capability, if you will, that every entity, the US government, academia, and the commercial sector can use. Well, what are ISAM capability needs? We found that we heard several things from the commercial sector, a different set of capabilities from within the government, and also others from academia. So we need this repository, if you will, of ISAM capabilities, gaps, ongoing activities, existing facilities. And that way we can communicate this information to our mission developers that will, and our budget colleagues who will determine what the future missions are, and also our regulatory agencies, as was alluded to earlier. I don't have to tell you this, that it's unrealistic for us to write a blank check. So how then do we elevate basic and applied research? We have to prioritize certain technologies and capabilities. And I mean experimental capabilities, demonstration capabilities, prototype missions. And that's why some of the work that AFRL is doing here is very important. So we are also looking into improving energy storage in space, specifically efforts focused on developing power sources for high power, high energy, or pulse power after extended storage. And I understand that there will be a discussion of this in the next panel, and I recommend that you speak to the agency that's leading that work, IARPA, and that IARPA is here today. And this is an area of critical importance, which is why we listed it and are supporting ODNI and IARPA in this unclassified research area. Another thing to talk to IARPA about, since I'm on the topic, is autonomous operations, onboard decision-making, and other AI technologies and systems that can contribute to ISAM. How do we improve, think about the hardware, software, algorithm, architecture ecosystem for specific AI applications? How do we improve the performance of our microelectronics? And it's really critical work that IARPA is doing for us on this topic, and we look forward to seeing the results of their efforts on this task soon. Now, on prioritizing scalable infrastructure that relates to ISAM, physical and digital infrastructure are foundational to our advancement in this area. Standards also play an important role and can be viewed as structurally necessary to enable this ecosystem that allows for technical certainty, that allows for interoperability. So what are we doing to facilitate standards development in the area of not just interfaces, but modularity and materials processes and operational processes also, to ensure that we have this increased, robust commercial market for ISAM services? That's where our Department of Commerce and NASA colleagues come in. They are engaging with you all to learn what universal standards we have to set. They are engaging with you all on, particularly the DoD, on how we support flight qualification of standard interface hardware. How do we facilitate commercial interface component availability for future spacecraft? And then how do we support space and ground infrastructure, closing the gaps between the existing infrastructure we have today while leveraging commercial in-space infrastructure to support in-space demonstrations of these new technologies and capabilities? How do we improve digital infrastructure? DoD and NASA has been working to foster the development of modeling and simulation tools in this area. We are also working, and I think DoD is also doing the heavy lift here too. We're working to develop a better approach to purchase things like commercial and space propellant services and infrastructure that will assist our ISAM operations. And then the third goal, which is accelerating the development in the commercial sector, is one that we realized that we needed to empower the U.S. departments and agencies to use commercial ISAM capabilities in government space activities. They are now, working on adopting commercially developed, modular infrastructure so that we can reduce the barrier of entry to ISAM. We are also looking to enable more commercial in-space services to thrive through more engagement with you all. And this is something that has rolled out recently, our consortium on ISAM, that I hope is seen as not just a place for federal departments and agencies and the large companies and academia to come together, but also a place for nonprofit research institutions and small businesses to come to the table to not just assess ISAM opportunities and needs, but incentivize collaboration across all these groups that I mentioned, and help encourage adoption of open standards. As this innovation accelerates, well, What is the role of the government versus the role of industry? What are our responsibilities? Do we delineate the responsibilities to procure services for government-owned and operated versus commercially owned, and with government as the customer? So NASA and DoD are leading that work to answer that question for us. And then this includes, looking at some of our contract options and clauses and spacecraft procurements to ensure that we're facilitating applicable ISAM applications or operations post-launch. And where can we improve contract and solicitation flexibility beyond, set programs? Where can we improve contract vehicles for licensing? And then on the international front, we are looking to help facilitate U.S. leadership, U.S. company leadership in providing services to our allies and partners. This is very relevant today as we look to retire the International Space Station in 7 years. There will be a major in-space manufacturing capability as part of that effort. How do we ensure that the U.S. remains the partner of choice, that our allies are coming to your companies and using your services instead of going to the other alternative, a strategic competitor? How do we ensure that they understand your current technologies, your nascent innovations, and that they know to come and talk to you to collaborate and work together? And I don't just, I'm not just thinking of partners, the usual partners in, Europe and say in Asia and parts of Asia. I'm thinking of new spacefaring nations, some in the Middle East, so that they come to you all and work together, so we continue to, again, strengthen and advance the use of the American ISAM ecosystem and innovation for the good of our country and economic growth and the good of your companies. And then on the heels of the G7 that just closed last week, how do we continue to prioritize environmental sustainability? Orbital debris was one of the major topics at the G7. And a number of the key technologies to enable orbital debris are ISAM technologies. How do we support commoditized autonomy and recycling, maneuvering, tugging of debris in space? Docking and berthing. How do we ensure that you have the regulatory support that you need? And my colleagues at the National Space Council are working hard on the regulatory piece right now. But how do we ensure that you have the standards needed to conduct orbital debris remediation work or services such as refueling, that all require environmental sustainability as you dock to another customer's system? And then on inspiring the workforce, there's so much we can do to ensure that the next generation realizes that there isn't one stove pipeline to becoming a member of this community. There are designers that are needed, there are architects that are needed, and there are obviously engineers and scientists, but roboticists and computer scientists. How do we ensure that we are using, I guess the technology buzzword for today is AI, but how do we ensure that we are taking from that community the minds that really belong in space and can use AI technologies and machine learning applications for the development of ISAM technologies that will benefit us on orbit, on celestial bodies, and everywhere else in space. So to answer those questions, the implementation plan has a list of actions that these agencies and departments are working on today. And I frankly am excited to be here and sit through the sessions to learn additional ideas of how you believe the agencies can implement them. Specifically, the tasks are written somewhat broadly to give the departments and agencies obviously some room to innovate and to develop solutions that are best suited for not just the government, but for commercial enterprise as well. So it's important that they, again, engaging through a consortium, through other vehicles amongst the different departments and agencies, it's important that these actionable steps help to foster numerous servicing capabilities and technologies. So with that, I'm really excited about our future. I'm excited to that we get to play a role in helping to grow the space asset class. And I think, as Bucky mentioned here earlier, ensuring that the GDP in 2040 and 2050 has a large space component, to ensure that the commercial sector is working with our government to make advances in space servicing, a culture that is commonplace across the entire space ecosystem by supporting standardization, adoption of interfaces across systems. I am excited about our resolve to build things, to continue to innovate, to manufacture a future in space. And I look forward to hearing your ideas on how we're doing, how our agencies are doing to implement some of the work you've seen displayed here today, and what more that we can do to ensure that we continue to remain a global leader in capabilities and technologies. Thank you.
We do have time for a couple questions. If you'd like to ask a question, please come up to this microphone so the virtual audience can see you. So just two, we got to catch up our agenda. Thanks.
Hi, Joe.
Space logistics. So just wanted to see if there's anything new you could add in terms of what the administration might be doing going towards, this was mentioned by Bucky, the regulatory side, and how we're going to do the supervision, the authorization for these new space type activity. Right, today we've very stovepiped in commercial communications, commercial Earth imaging, but we don't have anything established for all the rest of the stuff we want to do in space. Do you have anything you can share with us about directionality for that, plans?
Thanks, Joe. You know, the really exciting thing about working on space today is that there's so many people who are passionate about what we're doing within the community, within the room. And that's why, if it feels like some of these policies take a long time to, develop, it's because we have to wrestle with all the opinions, which are all great. And so, we have been working on this for about a year now, and actually I will be leaving early because there's a meeting tomorrow on this particular topic. But I can assure you that the departments and agencies and my colleagues at the White House have been working hard on ensuring that we not only have the complete comprehensive picture, but that the departments and agencies understand what it is that they are signing up to do on the regulatory side. Not all the activities that are known today will form the the whole scope, the entire scope of activities that will be regulated. So we have to take the time to ensure that we are accounting for, not necessarily saying move ahead of innovation, because we want to ensure that we have that culture of discovery that you all bring, but to ensure that we are developing the policy in such a way that not only meets the needs that we currently know, but the needs that might arise in the next 3 to 7 years. And that's to say nothing of what will arise in the next 15 years. So that's a long way of saying we're still working on it, and it should be done soon. We don't have a date because these things are very fluid, but we're actively working on it. And it's one thing when people are quiet in a room, usually during a meeting, particularly a meeting at the White House. But this is not one of those. This is one where we have really passionate discussions. So I hope that the end product is one that the community will see is as a result of a lot of thoughtful deliberation.
Bruce Cahan from Stanford. A couple of things Bucky touched on and Sprocket, the General Olson touched on. The SVB, trickled a conversation of over dependency on a single point of failure, let's say, in financial engineering of the space economy. I've called out, or reports have called out, the need for, let's say, an office of the chief economist in DoD. We have a lot of DFAR experts. Nobody I can talk to about a space commodities exchange. It's kind of over their head. We also seem to be always bringing intergovernmental conversations together for very specific and technically challenging, but not overarching things. Bucky alluded to the need to get out of our own way to plan how we, on a regular basis, think about the capital formation and giving the signals for private capital of what are the demand curves and supply curves for what you need to be doing where, when. How does the White House, how does your office look at capital formation and market formation for the space industry beyond going to Capitol Hill and asking for money?
Thank you, Bruce, for that question. You are taking me back to the development of the ISAM strategy where this topic came up. And what we realized is even those at the table in the room didn't know enough about it. So we began the process of educating the interagency, and not just the DoD, about it. And where are we today? We have sent a signal, and I hope that you appreciate that we don't run departments and agencies from the White House for a reason. So the DoD is a very complex place to start a new office and a new role like that, given all the complex components that happen there. One thing that I think is encouraging is the Defense Innovation Unit's move to the Pentagon, higher up in the organization chart, because DIU, as you know, has done a lot of work with startups and with small businesses and with banks. Now, are they considering it? Yes. Is there going to be a solution to tomorrow that will result in a chief economist tomorrow? I don't think that there is that crisp understanding yet. So I will make a plea and put it back to you. What are the ideas? How do we get this to be possible? And I will also add a second request, which is in addition to educating us and educating the DoD on the real importance of such a role. It's also educating the investors, because we hear from a lot of investors, and they tell a very different story than commercial companies tell us. And short of getting you all in a room, might do that soon, but short of getting you all in a room, it doesn't feel that they are hearing what you're telling us, what we're seeing that the commercial companies are doing. So we're looking for ideas. We don't have a solution, not just, and I would think, you know, much higher than just creating the role, but what is the bottom line? What is the end goal that we want, say, in fiscal year 2027, which we're going to start working on soon? You know, if you follow, we do live by a budget year cycle, and that's why, if I may add, the ISAM implementation plan that came out in December, you will start seeing a lot of those tasks being implemented in FY26, because that's where we are in the budget cycle. The consortium, which you saw, we funded back when we released the strategy, the first strategy in April. So that's why it was funded and was rolled out recently. So, you know, we're on a budget cycle. So it's just what specific outcome could that office or that role give us in fiscal year 27, fiscal year 28? You know, then we have a real case. But asking for something so tangible without, I think, clear goals and a charter is hard for us.
Part of a nation of recommendations. I'm happy to discuss.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thanks, Bruce. Dr. Hardy, really quick.
Just one last quick question. Dave Hardy, supporting Space Force. Have you begun to think about the implications as ISAM becomes important civilly, commercially, and militarily, as to what it means in terms of having to both defend and deny the capability? And also the eventual divergence between what's required militarily in an ISAM system and what's required in a civil and commercial ISAM. A military ISAM capability has to be able to operate during times of conflict, which would be very different from what a commercial system. And just where are you in thinking about that? Thanks.
Thank you. If you read the strategy with that question in mind, I think with hope you will see that we were thinking of that in writing that strategy. If you read the implementation plan with that in mind, and you have to realize with policy writing, I've got to do two things. One, it has to be accessible to, you know, my policy colleagues. It can't be too technical. It has to be written in plain English. And second, I'm not just writing to the US government and the US entities. I'm writing to allies and partners and strategic competitors who are reading all our public documents. So if you, I would recommend taking a read of those actions. There might be some, if a word choice seems odd to you, I would, you know, read it again. And I think it clearly answers that we are looking at this both or from a three-pronged approach, civilly, commercially, and from a security standpoint. And we are actively working, thanks to, again, our colleagues at ODNI and our colleagues at the Department of Defense. We are actively working to ensure that we continue to lead in this area.
Hi, thanks for being here. Bill Rayner,
Last question.
Naval Research Lab. I'm also the part of the U.S. Technical Advisory Group to ISO. And in 2 weeks, we're convening. And my working group deals specifically with international standards to spacecraft interfaces. So what would be your advice to me and to my group looking forward for new work products that could enhance ISAM initiatives internationally in collaboration with our allied countries?
Spectacular, Bill. First, I would strongly encourage that you talk to NASA, particularly the Space Technologies Mission Director. We have too many acronyms, try not to use acronyms here. STMD, the Space Technologies Mission Directorate, that is leading a lot of the civil space ISAM work, particularly standards development, with hope they are aware of what you're doing. And secondly, I am not tracking who within the Department of Defense is leading this work. And if it's not you, I hope that we can make you someone who the Pentagon, and by the Pentagon, I mean OSD policy, OSD R&E, look to, as well as the components and research agencies like DARPA, look to you as the representative for DoD standards as we work with, as you work with our international allies and partners to develop these standards. A third thing I would mention is to ensure that the State Department is aware and coordinating your activities with you as well, because they tend to be, again, this is why Bruce's question was a tricky one, that it's a complex one because we have so many different groups, right, representing the United States. The State Department tends to be out front, but they don't necessarily have the technical knowledge or the mission to do all of the support that comes along with standards development universally. So I would recommend NASA, State Department, particularly OES, which I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but I'd be happy to talk to you offline. And this is really important work, and NASA is leading on the civil side. I know that particular agencies that OD&I oversees, such as NRO, are looking for leadership on this area. So I would hope that NRO is aware of this work as well, because these standards are important to them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Uzo-Okoro. Very awesome presentation.